Yeah, hi peeps. I'm going to bring up a topic which is probably very contentious, but I believe it's a topic that needs to be discussed, and it needs to be discussed in a public forum, not just by politicians, rich landowners, and the sort of legal system, lawyers and judges. It needs to actually be opened up to discussion by the people of the country in which these really serious questions need to be raised. For instance, who owns the land that you live on? It's a very, very serious question. I mean, if you're someone who has been a landowner and has had that land passed down to you through generations of owning that land because some king, 300 years ago liked your great ancestor who perhaps fought well for him in a war, or killed one of his enemies, or rode to his defence and defending his crown. Yeah, you are now a lord, a lady, whatever, and your family have owned that land for a long time, but that land was given to you by someone who had the total right at the time to say, I own the whole of this land, I own this country that I can put my soldiers out onto and defend, and I give you this land for helping me defend this land. So that's how most of the lords, ladies and all that got their land. But what about present day? What about today? You buy a house. Do you actually own the land your house is on? In certain places in Britain, you don't actually own the land. Well, you own the surface land down to like 10 metres, and you own your foundations, you own the house, but you don't own the earth underneath you. If some coal, mining company, or some ore mining company, or whatever, oil or fracking company buys the license to dig 300 or 3,000 metres under your house and frack that land and blow it the fuck up underneath you in order to get gas out. You think that this is it's the future. Fracking is the future. We're going to go under your house and frack that fucking land and take the gas out from the shale level that might be under your house. Not every house has got shale under it, but the houses that do have it 3,000 metres under, or 30,000 metres, they're going to go down there and they're going to take that gas out. The problem that we have today is we are seeing poisoning of the water tables, and we're seeing small earthquakes caused by putting pressure into the land under your house. Now, a lot of people are trying to say, well, how can putting pressure into the ground to break up the rocks down there and suck out the fucking gas possibly be causing earthquakes? Well, this is exactly how earthquakes are caused. It's pressure. It's the pressure of moving plates pushing against each other. Now, the land underneath you at the moment, if nobody's fracking under you, isn't going anywhere. It's stable. But when they start to put pressure into that rock underneath your house, well, that's a bit like them suddenly a continent hitting another continent. You know what I mean? They are putting pressure on those rocks. Those rocks have got to move somewhere. Something's got to give. That's why you do see small earthquakes, and we're talking on a scale of 0.18, 0.3, Richter scale, and they're pretty deep under your house, compared to you, but really they're really, really shallow compared to geological events. A geological event could be 180,000 metres, under the ocean floor, and that will cause a tidal wave which sweeps across the South Pacific and it's an island. The fact that they're doing this sort of like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 metres under your house, that's pretty close to your house. You might not think it, you think thousands of metres, you know what I mean? But it's not, it's very, very close to your house. And the fact that you might find, like some people seem to be claiming they've found in America, that their water table has been affected by this released gas, and now they can turn the tap on their basement and put a lighter to it and actually light the water, because it's not just water that's coming through. The water is actually, well, you could say aerated, but it's not aerated, it's infused with gas, and as the water comes up and expands and it releases the gas from a soluble liquid to a gas at your tap, you're lighting methane, natural gas basically. Natural gas is being released through your tap. Now, we've seen people claim that this is what's happening in America, and I'm damn sure if we start to do fracking and the amount of availability of shale in Britain, we are going to see people lighting the tap water in Britain as well over the next 2 or 3 years, if they haven't already, you know. But yeah, so who owns the land you live on? For instance, I went to a public school. That public school used to own a fair amount of land around about it. It was council land because it was a public school. They were allowed to sell that land off to private builders in order for them to, you know, pay the debts that they had incurred, because the national budget for local area schools had been cut by the national government. And what that ended up doing is the football fields that the school owned had to be sold off. The private area that, you know, the school owned in front of it had to be sold off. And eventually they shut the school down and they sold the whole school off to private builders. That was a secondary school that Castlemilk could have used. They could have kept, you know. They know that, okay, this year and maybe for the next 5 years that there's a drop in you know, births, and therefore there's less people coming through. Well, all I would have said is, well, that would just mean that each teacher has got less pupils per class. So instead of having a class of 32 or 35, you have a class of 20. That would only improve the ability for you to teach those children. It wouldn't make it financially invaluable, you know, or financially unable to run the school. It would just mean that the quality of the education given to those pupils who passed through the school during those, say, 5 or 10 years where there was a low population in the area going to that school, would just mean they would be better educated. I would have seen that as a positive, not as a negative. I would have seen that as a positive. But apparently, you know, our government, our local authorities seen that as a negative and shut the school down, and then further, you know, built up overbuilt the amount of pupils in each of the classrooms in the 2 or 3 left secondary schools in the area, going from 32 to 40 pupils per class for a period of time. Now that doesn't make sense to me. What would make sense to me would be to say, well, if this secondary school has dropped to 20%, perhaps some of the pupils going to this school or that school could be sent there to balance out, so that everybody's got a classroom of 30 or 25 or, you know, 28 or something. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say that let's shut schools down and boost all the others to 40 pupils per class. It doesn't make sense to me, you know. And who actually owns this land anyway? It's supposedly owned and governed. Well, it's governed by the local authority, but who owns the land? You own the land. We, the people, own that land. Should these people be allowed, these local government authorities, should they be allowed to sell off schools, school playgrounds, playing fields, parkland? Some of this parkland was put into ownership by the people of the area, by rich people who owned it previously and were dying and had no one to leave it to. They had no offspring. You know, they had never got married for whatever reason, and they left that land to the people. The people of Scotland, the people of England, you know, in perpetuity. And then, because it's governed by local authorities, these local authorities later on, 20, 30 years later, when they find that, you know, money's a little bit tight, let's just sell off that land that was left to the people of the area in perpetuity for us to govern. Well, now that we govern it, let's just say that we own it and let's just sell it off to some private fucking company who's going to build houses on it. I don't see that they have the right to do that. They shouldn't have the right to do that. That land was left to us, the people, not to the fucking people who we voted in. Yeah, we unfortunately voted into power. They shouldn't have the power to sell off land that was left to the people. They should be able to decide where, because we govern it, we will spend money on it. But a lot of this is parkland, and if you suddenly decide, well, I can't sell that land, but what I can do is refuse to pay money to look after it, then basically you shut the gates and leave it to overgrow for a decade or so. And then when the money comes back, then you employ people to go in there and clear the old wood out and repair it back into a semblance of a parkland that people can use and visit. That's what I would have done with the land. Not just sell it off to some private company which will clear it of trees and build houses on it, and now someone who doesn't have the right to be on that land owns it. It doesn't make any sense to me. It is fucktardy to think that that's the way that we should be dealing with the land that we live on. It's fucktardy to think that that's what we should do with all parkland. We just turn it into fucking houses. Simply because we need an extra £30 million this year, so let's just fucking sell that shit off, you know. That land was given to us in perpetuity by the people who owned it before, who probably got it through no great endeavour of their own, but was passed down from some ancestor who stabbed somebody in the throat for some king or other, you know. Yeah, that's a great way to get a huge piece of land, which nowadays is well worth keeping as land for us to use and utilise for recreation and other uses, and not just to be sold off to some private company where they can make billions of profit on it, and you end up with another fucking shithole that's going to get flooded, or, you know, the government's going to have to spend millions and millions over the next years constantly rebuilding roads and bridges get fucking washed out, you know what I mean? I just... Anyway, who owns the land? Is it the people? Or is it the person you voted into power to only be there for the next 4 years? Do they have the right to turn around and overturn hundreds of years of history of that land being owned by the people? Do they have the right in the 4 years they're in office, because you voted them in, to sell that land to a private company where they get a kickback or they get a job in that company when their 4 years term is up, and we lose the land? We the people lose the land and it goes to some private fucking ownership that they can do whatever they want. I don't believe that that's right. That needs to be fucking sorted the fuck out, man. As long as you fucking van motherfuckers.